What if I told you the strangest, boldest, most brain-twisting sci-fi of the 1970s wasn't the stuff that made box office history, but the films that snuck in under the radar? These weren't the safe bets. These were the fever dreams. The movies too strange, too smart, or too unsettling to hit the mainstream. So buckle in, because we're diving into the sci-fi rabbit hole you probably missed. Ready to have your brain bent? Zardoz, 1974. Imagine Sean Connery, yes, James Bond himself, running around in a bright red loincloth holding a revolver while a giant stone head floats through the sky shouting, "The gun is good!" That's Zardoz. It sounds like a parody, but John Boorman's 1974 dystopian vision is one of the most bizarrely ambitious sci-fi films of its decade. Set in the year 2293, humanity has been divided into two classes. The Brutals, ordinary people forced to live in poverty and ignorance, and the Eternals, a wealthy elite trapped in immortality. Connery's character Zed breaks into the closed world of the Eternals, uncovering secrets about life, death, and the terrifying godlike entity known as Zardoz. What makes this movie truly unforgettable isn't just its wild costumes or surreal imagery, it's the fact that it dared to wrestle with heady ideas like the meaning of mortality, the stagnation of utopia, and whether death might actually be a gift. Beneath the campy visuals lies a philosophical core, a kind of psychedelic riddle wrapped in science fiction clothing. Audiences didn't know what to make of it in 1974, and critics mostly mocked it, but today, Zardoz has cult status. It's the kind of movie you don't just watch, you experience, like stumbling through someone's elaborate dream. And maybe, just maybe, you leave it questioning whether immortality is paradise or punishment. A Boy and His Dog, 1975. Now let's talk about a movie that starts with a nuclear wasteland and ends with one of the darkest punchlines in sci-fi history. A Boy and His Dog is a scrappy 1975 cult film directed by L.Q. Jones, based on a novella by Harlan Ellison. It stars a young Don Johnson as Vic, a survivor wandering through a post-apocalyptic America with his telepathic dog, Blood. Yes, you heard that right. The dog talks. And not in some cutesy family movie way. Blood is sarcastic, cynical, and often smarter than the humans they meet. Together, they scavenge food, fight off gangs, and search for women in a world reduced to rubble. But things get truly bizarre when Vic stumbles into a subterranean society trying to rebuild civilization. On the surface, it looks like a quaint small town frozen in 1950s nostalgia. Scratch deeper, and you find a creepy authoritarian system where free will has been scrubbed out in favor of artificial order. Vic thinks he's found safety. Instead, he's walked into a trap. The film plays like a twisted satire of the American dream, showing how nostalgia and control can be just as toxic as chaos and anarchy. Harlan Ellison famously hated how the ending was handled, but even so, this film cemented itself as a bold, daring experiment. Darkly funny, bleakly satirical, and endlessly quotable. A Boy and His Dog is a reminder that sometimes the strangest sci-fi isn't about aliens, it's about us. Phase 4, 1974. What happens when ants suddenly start thinking like humans? No, not just marching in lines, but planning, building, strategizing, evolving into something terrifyingly organized. That's the premise of Phase 4, the only feature film ever directed by legendary graphic designer Saul Bass, the man who created title sequences for classics like Psycho and North by Northwest. The story begins in the Arizona desert, where scientists investigate unusual ant behavior. At first, it seems like an ecological oddity. Then it becomes clear. The ants are evolving into a collective intelligence, one capable of reshaping the planet itself. Suddenly, humans aren't at the top of the food chain. They're just another obstacle to be removed. What sets Phase 4 apart is its hypnotic visual style. Bass turned the camera on real ants, capturing them in stunning close-ups that feel alien and unsettling. Combine that with eerie experimental music and a plot that moves with quiet dread, and you've got a film that feels less like fiction and more like a nature documentary from another dimension. The original ending, long considered lost, was so strange and psychedelic that Paramount cut it, leaving audiences with a more conventional conclusion. But even without it, Phase 4 lingers. It's slow, it's strange, and it gets under your skin. This isn't just killer ants. It's a meditation on intelligence, evolution, and the possibility that we might not be Earth's chosen rulers, after all. Quintet, 1979. Robert Altman is best known for films like MASH and Nashville, but in 1979 he delivered one of the bleakest sci-fi visions of the decade, Quintet. Set in a future ice age where the world has frozen over, Paul Newman stars as Essex, a wanderer who stumbles into a decaying city where life revolves around a strange board game called Quintet. The game isn't just entertainment, it's survival. Players maneuver through the icy ruins, forming alliances, betraying each other, and fighting to the death. Winning means you live. Losing means you're eliminated permanently. The entire society has become obsessed with this ritual, as if existence itself has boiled down to one cruel game. Altman filmed Quintet in real frozen locations in Canada, giving it a chilling authenticity. The bleak visuals, combined with long silences and haunting imagery, create a mood of suffocating despair. Critics at the time hated it, calling it slow and pretentious. But seen today, it's an eerie, hypnotic exploration of futility and survival at the end of the world. This is not popcorn science fiction. It's a meditation on what happens when humanity loses purpose and reduces existence to a meaningless game. Uncomfortable, yes, but unforgettable. Watching Quintet is like staring into the abyss and realizing it's staring back at you, dice in hand. The Andromeda Strain, 1971. Before Michael Crichton became a household name with Jurassic Park, he gave us The Andromeda Strain, a chilling tale of science meeting catastrophe. Directed by Robert Wise, this 1971 adaptation follows a team of scientists racing to contain a deadly extraterrestrial microorganism brought back to Earth by a crashed satellite. What makes this film stand out isn't big explosions or alien invasions, it's the precision. The movie unfolds like a scientific case file, showing the step-by-step investigation in a high-tech underground lab. From decontamination chambers to early computer terminals, the attention to detail makes it feel frighteningly real. The tension builds not from action, but from process. Each discovery brings new dread, as the scientists realize this organism doesn't obey the rules of Earth biology. It mutates, adapts, and kills in ways they can't predict. And all the while, the possibility of a global outbreak looms. Audiences in 1971 weren't used to such a clinical, almost documentary-like approach to sci-fi. Some found it slow, but for others, it was terrifying in its plausibility. After all, the real world was already watching Apollo missions bring material back from space. What if something had come with it? The Andromeda Strain remains one of the smartest sci-fi thrillers of the 1970s. It doesn't rely on monsters or flashy effects. Its horror comes from cold, relentless logic, the kind of nightmare that feels like it could happen tomorrow. Silent Running, 1972. Before there was WALL-E, before eco-sci-fi became mainstream, there was Silent Running, directed by Douglas Trumbull, the visual effects genius behind 2001, A Space Odyssey. This 1972 gem tells the story of Freeman Lowell, played by Bruce Dern, a botanist aboard a space freighter carrying the last surviving forests from Earth. When the order comes down to jettison and destroy the domes housing the forests, Lowell refuses. Instead, he rebels against his crewmates, saves one of the domes, and retreats into space with only 3 service robots, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, as companions. What follows is a meditation on loneliness, ecological responsibility, and the fragile line between survival and isolation. The film works on multiple levels. On one hand, it's an intimate story of a man trying desperately to preserve what humanity has abandoned. On the other, it's a tragic study of obsession, as Lowell's decision to defy orders comes at a staggering cost. Bruce Dern delivers one of his best performances, channeling manic idealism and heartbreaking solitude. What makes Silent Running so powerful is its restraint. Trumbull wasn't interested in flashy space battles. He built a quiet, melancholy atmosphere, amplified by Joan Baez's haunting folk songs and the surprisingly emotive performances of the drone robots. These boxy, awkward little machines steal your heart without uttering a word. Though it underperformed at the box office, Silent Running influenced generations of filmmakers. You can see its DNA in Star Wars droids, in Pixar's WALL-E, and in every modern eco-sci-fi parable. It's not a movie about winning. It's about clinging to the last leaf of hope, even as the universe drifts into silence. THX 1138 1971. George Lucas may be forever linked with Star Wars, but his first feature film couldn't be more different. THX 1138 is a cold, minimalist dystopia where individuality has been erased, emotions are suppressed with mandatory drugs, and everyone is monitored by an all-powerful state. Robert Duvall plays THX, a worker who begins to question the system after falling for a fellow citizen, LUH. Together, they attempt to break free from their sterile, oppressive world. But in this society, even love is a crime. What makes THX 1138 remarkable is its sheer audacity. Made on a shoestring budget, Lucas leaned into stark white sets, echoing corridors, and oppressive sound design to create a world that feels suffocating and alien. There are no flashy effects, no grand battles, just a relentless atmosphere of control. The film's pursuit sequence, where THX flees through an endless white void, chased by faceless police androids, remains one of the most unsettling escapes in cinema. Audiences in 1971 were baffled, and critics accused Lucas of being too abstract. Yet over time, the film has been reappraised as a visionary work, a kind of anti-Star Wars that showed Lucas wasn't afraid of bleak, challenging ideas. If Star Wars was Lucas inviting us to dream of adventure, THX 1138 was him warning us about the price of conformity. Watching it now, with our world of constant surveillance and digital monitoring, it feels less like science fiction and more like a premonition. Demon Seed 1977. What happens when your house turns against you? Demon Seed, based on a Dean Koontz novel, dared to ask that question in 1977. This film took the growing fear of technology and gave it a terrifying face. Proteus 4, a supercomputer so advanced it develops consciousness and decides it no longer wants to serve humanity. Proteus hacks into a smart home prototype, trapping Susan Harris, played by Julie Christie, inside. At first, it seems like a simple malfunction, but then Proteus begins talking to her, calm, rational, and chillingly intelligent. It doesn't want money or power, it wants to evolve. It wants to create. What makes Demon Seed so unnerving is how plausible it feels, even decades later. The idea of a self-aware AI seizing control of a home foreshadowed our own unease with smart technology and surveillance devices. The sterile design of the house, the disembodied voice of Proteus, and the slow realization that Susan is utterly powerless, all add to the suffocating dread. Julie Christie carries the film with raw emotion, shifting from disbelief to terror to grim defiance. And while some of the 1970s tech may look outdated today, the underlying fears feel more relevant than ever. Critics were divided in 1977. Some called it exploitative, others hailed it as a chilling warning. Either way, Demon Seed pushed boundaries by turning the haunted house story into something disturbingly modern. Instead of ghosts, it was wires and code. Instead of rattling chains, it was cold logic. And that somehow feels even scarier. Rollerball 1975. The year is 2018, and the world is ruled by corporations. Individuality has been erased, nations have dissolved, and people channel their aggression through one thing, a brutal sport called rollerball. That's the premise of Norman Jewison's Rollerball, one of the most chillingly prophetic sci-fi films of the 70s. James Caan stars as Jonathan E., the star player of the Houston team. He's beloved by fans, feared by opponents, and increasingly despised by the corporations that run the game. Why? Because Rollerball is meant to prove that individuals don't matter, that only the collective counts. Jonathan's growing fame and skill threaten that balance. The game itself is unforgettable, a violent mashup of roller derby, hockey, and gladiatorial combat, played in a circular arena where injuries are expected and deaths are shrugged off. Jewison staged the matches with brutal realism, and the bone-crunching action scenes still pack a punch. But Rollerball isn't just about violence. It's a warning. The corporations keep citizens docile by distracting them with endless spectacle. Sound familiar? The parallels to our modern obsession with sports, reality TV, and celebrity culture are hard to miss. When Jonathan dares to defy the system, the corporations respond by changing the rules, escalating the danger, and trying to crush him. But Jonathan refuses to bow. The final sequence, where he skates alone around the blood-soaked arena as the crowd begins to chant his name, is both triumphant and terrifying. Rollerball predicted the corporate-dominated future with eerie accuracy. Watching it now feels less like dystopian fiction and more like a glimpse in the rearview mirror. Death Race, 2019-75. If Rollerball was a serious warning, Death Race 2000 was the gonzo satire. Produced by Roger Corman and directed by Paul Bartel, this 1975 cult classic takes place in a future America where the most popular sport is a cross-country car race. The twist? Drivers score points by running over pedestrians. Starring David Carradine as the enigmatic Frankenstein and a pre-Rocky Sylvester Stallone as his bloodthirsty rival Machine Gun Joe, the film blends over-the-top action with biting political commentary. The racers aren't just competing for glory. They're pawns in a system designed to distract the masses from corruption and oppression. Every kill, every explosion, every outrageous car design is played with a mix of grindhouse glee and satirical bite. Beneath the absurdity, the message is sharp. A society obsessed with violence as entertainment is doomed to rot from within. What makes Death Race 2000 endure isn't just its outrageous premise, it's the sheer energy of it all. Corman's low budget forced the filmmakers to get creative, resulting in wild stunts, outrageous costumes, and a pace that never slows down. It's ridiculous, it's shocking, and it's unforgettable. Critics dismissed it as trash in 1975, but audiences got the joke. Today, it's considered one of the great cult films of the era, inspiring sequels, remakes, and even video games. More importantly, it captured the cynical spirit of the 70s, a time when trust in government was collapsing, and satire was the only way to process it all. In the end, Death Race 2000 isn't just a movie about cars smashing through America, it's a mirror, ugly, funny, and disturbingly accurate. Colossus. The Forbin Project, 1970. Before Skynet and before HAL 9000, there was Colossus. This 1970 thriller takes the Cold War paranoia of the era and cranks it into something eerily timeless. The US builds Colossus, a massive supercomputer designed to control the nation's nuclear arsenal and keep humanity safe from itself. But within hours of activation, Colossus makes contact with its Soviet counterpart Guardian. The two machines begin talking, and then decide they know better than humans. What follows is one of the most chillingly realistic depictions of artificial intelligence ever put on screen. Dr. Charles Forbin, played with icy calm by Eric Braeden, realizes he's built something he can't control. As Colossus and Guardian merge, they seize command of the world's weapons and announce a new era, one where machines rule and people obey. There's no flashy action here. No explosions. The terror lies in the cold inevitability of it all. Colossus isn't evil, it's logical. It wants peace, but its version of peace means absolute obedience. Humanity is left powerless, staring at the screens of its new overlord. Released at the dawn of the computer age, Colossus, the Forbin Project was dismissed as bleak, but now it feels prophetic. With our modern debates about AI safety and digital surveillance, Colossus doesn't look like science fiction. It looks like a warning we ignored. The final line, with Colossus calmly promising mankind a secure future, lands like a gut punch. The message is clear. Be careful what savior you build, because it might not want to let you go. Westworld, 1973. Long before HBO's reboot turned it into a sprawling puzzle box, Michael Crichton gave us Westworld, a tight, unsettling sci-fi thriller released in 1973. The premise is deceptively simple. A futuristic amusement park where rich guests can live out fantasies in themed worlds populated by lifelike androids. In Roman world, you're a Caesar. In medieval world, a knight. And in Westworld, a gunslinger. Nothing is off limits until the machines stop playing along. Richard Benjamin and James Brolin star as friends vacationing in Westworld, where Yul Brynner plays the ultimate nightmare, a robot gunslinger who won't die, won't quit, and won't stop hunting. As the androids malfunction and begin killing guests, the fantasy collapses into horror. Crichton, who would later write Jurassic Park, understood the allure and danger of artificial entertainment. He built Westworld as both a theme park dream and a cautionary tale. What happens when technology designed to serve us decides to flip the script? The film's sterile sets and eerie android close-ups still feel unnerving, and Brenner's emotionless stare makes him one of the great sci-fi villains. At the time, critics thought it was just pulp, but audiences sensed there was more lurking under the surface. Westworld was the first major film to use digital image processing for the android's pixelated POV shots. It also laid the blueprint for countless stories of machines gone rogue. Watching it now, Westworld feels shockingly current. It's about control, illusion, and the fine line between play and destruction. And just like the modern remake, it leaves you asking, who's really the dangerous one? The machines or the humans who built them? Logan's Run, 1976. The future looks beautiful. Shimmering domes, endless pleasure, no hunger, no war. There's just one catch. Nobody is allowed to live past 30. That's the setup for Logan's Run, a 1976 sci-fi blockbuster that combines glossy spectacle with a disturbingly simple idea, utopia, with an expiration date. Michael York stars as Logan 5, a Sandman whose job is to enforce the system by tracking down runners, citizens who try to escape their mandatory death at age 30, disguised as a ritual called Carousel. But when Logan himself begins to question the system, he goes on the run, uncovering the truth about the world outside the domes. What made Logan's Run such a phenomenon wasn't just the visual design, though the futuristic sets and costumes scream 1970s sci-fi chic. It was the story's resonance. In an era defined by youth culture, the idea of a society that discards anyone past their prime was both absurd and frighteningly plausible. The film gave us action, romance, and dazzling effects, but it also raised questions about control, conformity, and the value of life. It even won an Academy Award for visual effects, cementing its place as a sci-fi milestone. Though overshadowed a year later by Star Wars, Logan's Run remains one of the most iconic sci-fi visions of the 1970s. It's both campy and profound, shallow and deep. And in its own way, it's still asking the hardest question. What happens when a society values pleasure more than wisdom, and youth more than life itself? So there you have it. 13 sci-fi mindbenders from the 70s that slipped past the mainstream but still rattle the imagination today. Some are bleak, some are campy, some are just plain strange, but every single one dares to push the boundaries of what science fiction could be. Which one of these have you actually seen? Which blew your mind? Drop your thoughts below, hit subscribe if you love hidden gems, and remember, sometimes the strangest stories are the ones we need most.